All right, we're live. Welcome, everybody, to the third episode of Fitness Over 40. Today, we're discussing all things nutrition. We're going to try and hit some broad topics, give some information on what we think about nutrition. Henry's going to give us some insights on how he works with clients and how he thinks about a lot of nutrition, why it's important, why you should be focusing on it. Maybe you'll hear some not so traditional things that could inspire you to make some good changes in your nutrition. To kick it off, I want to know what have you eaten today, Henry?
Oh man, it's been a real busy day. So I woke up early to get a run in, and then I had to race out to handle some personal business and then run back here. So I had a post-workout shake after my run. That's around 500 calories, what I put in there. And then I sneaked in a small lunch because I had 20 minutes before this to get on, and I wanted to make sure that I chewed well. So smaller than usual plate with rice, beans, plantains, and pork.
Nice. Okay, so the shake, do you is this blended like a shake, or is this just powders and shake it up and go?
Well, a little bit of both. So I use two different powders. One's like an actual recovery, like high carb powder, and then I add my regular protein powder in there. But I like to throw ice and put it in the Ninja. Just makes it tastier.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then how was the pork prepared?
How was that prepared? Probably, yeah, that was like grilled,
Mm-hmm.
like boneless pork chops grilled, and I eat rice basically 3 times a day, and rice, beans, and plantains are kind of like the main go-to here in PR. So,
okay, what kind of beans?
Black beans today.
Is that standard, or do you change it up?
They change it up. I'd say like red, or what they call kidney beans, are the most popular here, but they use all sorts. I would say that black beans are a little bit more Cuban, and I'm half Cuban, so definitely a strong influence. But white, pink, red, black, doesn't matter. People here love their rice and beans.
Gotcha. And then the plantains, do you cook those? Are they raw?
No, those are cooked.
Okay.
Those are cooked. Yeah, green plantains. You don't want to eat those raw. Those will be very hard to digest and bitter. So just cook in a little bit of coconut oil.
Nice.
Get a little sweet in there. Yeah, tasty.
And so do you eat beans a lot, or like is that a common thing every day for you, or is it just here and there?
I wouldn't say every day, but so the way we have it set up here in my house, we have somebody that we've hired that comes in on Mondays, and we have all the groceries here, and they basically cook for the entire week, at least through Friday, and that includes a vegetable mix, like 4 different proteins, a lot of rice, and they usually also make a pot of beans. So we'll just hit that up until they run out, and that usually happens around Thursday. If my kid decides that it's beans week for him. So
yeah. Okay, so how do you even get started with that? Is that like a common service there, or you just hear someone about it and you're like, dang, I need to try that? Or what?
No, man. So that started out of frustration because we don't have like good meal prep services here in the island. There are different ones, but none offer the flexibility for me to control the portions that I want, to actually give them macros, or to be specific enough to where I can say, like, yeah, just give me 2 of those meals or 1.5 or whatever it is. And a combination of that, or maybe the ones that get a little bit closer, I honestly just haven't liked all that much. Or maybe they don't have delivery and the pickup doesn't work for me. So, it's been tough doing that. So, we just ran into somebody whom does. She's not a cook. She's not a cook. She's actually a cleaning lady around where I live. And we asked her one time, like, do you cook? And she's like, yeah. I mean, I cook at home every day. I'm like, well, would you be willing to do this? And she said, sure, no problem. So we've been doing that for, I want to say like 4 or 5 years now. Works beautifully.
That's awesome. Yeah. So is there anything you don't eat, like specific foods, and maybe not for a specific reason, but or anything for a specific reason that you don't eat?
I mean, I don't eat fast foods. I don't eat a lot of candy, sweets, that kind of stuff. But outside of that, I don't eat a lot of fish or seafood. Not because I don't like it, but me personally, I cannot reheat that. Like it disgusts me a little bit, and I don't want to kind of throw that out there to people who may not mind it, but I just can't eat that reheated. And since most of my meals are, they're stored and it's just, prepped beforehand, then those are not in the lineup. But if I go out to a restaurant, then it's a different story. I may order some fish, seafood, or whatnot.
Okay, cool. Gotcha. So no like wheat or typical stuff people might say, like, I don't eat dairy, I don't eat legumes, I don't eat wheat, I don't eat certain oils. Less picky.
Well, yeah, I definitely avoid or try to avoid vegetable oils. I try to avoid deep fried foods. I've done several DNA tests. I've consistently been very non-reactive to dairy and gluten, so it's not an issue for me. However, I do believe, particularly on the gluten front, that every human has, to a degree, some reaction to gluten. So I still try to avoid it, but I don't mind it too much. There's certain things that when we have that, I just like how they taste better with regular bread than gluten-free bread. For example, French toast. So if we make French toast on Sunday, and that just goes with regular bread, and we just enjoy that. So not a big issue for me. I do well with all foods, really.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, very nice. That was good. I wonder if people are going to hear that and be like, man, I just need to find someone who's going to cook it for me, and I can get it all and buy it all and go that route.
Yeah, I don't know why or how nobody's thought of offering this as a service.
Mm-hmm.
All of my local clients would be willing to do that for somebody who's just willing to go and charge whatever they need to charge for the amount of hours that they're there cooking. And I think it's a great solution because you also get to control the quality of the food that you're eating, because I buy that, right? I know the meats I buy, I know the veg, I know everything that I buy. So it's just giving her a little direction. I really do eat the things that I know that I should be eating. Like, all of that tastes good. None of it blows my mind in taste. It's just like, it's good. And I'm okay with that repeatedly, because I would rather have that than, not eat the right things in favor of having it be hyper palatable. So, and that's one of the things that we're definitely going to be talking about, having alignment around what you're eating and why you're eating it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Any coffee?
Yes, I have coffee in the morning, black. Prepare myself in the Chemex.
Nice.
That's
okay.
Non-negotiable.
Yeah. I have. I use the Chemex every once in a while, an espresso every once in a while, but mostly I do my own cold brew, and I just have it black. I like it cold, especially right now it's hot, but I'll drink it in the winter too. It doesn't matter. I'll drink it hot too.
I've never been able to do cold brew. Like, first, I don't like coffee and any other food or like any dessert like that has coffee. Like I don't like whatever that cake is that has coffee in it, or like coffee ice cream. I can't stand that. Like to me, like coffee only tastes good when it's warm coffee in my cup. And I've never been able to get over that when I've tried cold brew before. Yeah.
Okay, for me, the hot coffee, that's what I was drinking for years. But when I was drinking it close to training, I would get acid reflux. Even if I drank it like 2 hours before, I would just have just a little bit, and it could have been the amount I was drinking. But when I switched to Cold brew, it's less acidic because it's not, burned. So I could have it, 30 minutes before, and that was never an issue. Now when I bring in the hot coffee, it's not as bad, but sometimes I'll still have it a little bit. So that's one of the big reasons I moved to that.
Yeah, it's interesting because cold brew, like you're going to get a lot more caffeine in cold brew from an equivalent amount or volume of coffee beans or ground coffee. So yeah, definitely interesting there.
Yeah, I dilute it. So I'll make it myself, and then I'll dilute it a little bit with water. And I try not to have too much. I'm not like super, like it doesn't hype me up too much. Like my wife will drink coffee and she could have one shot of espresso and she's jittery. And if she had like a cold brew, she has had one at like 8 a.m. all nighter, cannot sleep. For me, it's not as bad as long as I just don't drink it before noon. If I have it a little bit later, I can start seeing my sleep quality drop off a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think I'm affected all that much. I still don't drink coffee past, I'm not going to say 6 a.m., but because maybe it's a little bit later in the weekends. But, wake up, drink my salt lime water, and have a coffee, and that's that. I usually don't have another. If I were competing in something, I would definitely pound espresso, and I would drink as much as needed to get jittery.
Yeah,
I like that feeling. I feel like I can hone that in well. Maybe because of my background and like the mindset I get in before competing. That was not as useful when I did triathlon. I actually had to consciously dial that back and even work with a sports psychologist because it's such a long event. You just can't come out that hyped up. Like you need to come out in a different state. So yeah, a little bit of digression there, but
yeah. All right, let's get into it then. All right, so nutrition. What I wanted to open with is why people should care about it. I think most people have a pretty good idea and they understand like you got to eat good, and whether that's like I don't want to be sick, I don't want to get cancer in 4 years, or I don't want to get a cold in a week. I want to feel good, sleep well. I kind of broke it down into 3 things why I think people should start, mainly 2, but there's a health and a performance aspect. So the health, like in your mind, when you're thinking of, I need good nutrition, and we've touched on this before, I guess, in some of the other podcasts, but why is it important to you, and why do you think other people should think this is something they should be taking more seriously than they probably do?
Yeah, nutrition is our fuel. And I could easily just say period there, but you can't, or if you actually try to think about everything that's happening inside our bodies as we speak, as you and I are talking, as somebody who's listening to this, whatever it is that you're doing, there's so much going on in your body at any given point. That requires not only energy, but certain biochemical reactions to make your physiology operate and be able to make all that happen. And that requires macro and micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and that's how we get it from our food, or we're intended to get it from our food. So if you want these things to operate optimally, so in other words, if you want to be alive how you were meant to be alive and function, then this is extremely important because this is how you do it.
Yeah, so that's like almost the reverse. A lot of people think like, I'm going to work out so I can kind of eat whatever I want, or I worked out so I could eat this. And that, whereas it should be kind of engineered backwards, where like they're eating so they can live and so they can enjoy doing something physical.
Yeah, I already mentioned it the one time, and by the time we're done here, people are going to roll their eyes. Those are bad intentions when it comes to foods, and that's where it needs to start, right? And thinking like, why is it that I'm eating in the first place? And then go from there to all the other layers that may come from that. So,
yeah,
we chatted on this it was last time. I think it was the first time that on the first podcast. But anyways, what makes for a good training session? You need to be challenged. That is a problem. We're not challenged enough. Now, if you are challenged properly, And unfortunately, a lot of people challenge themselves too much just so that you can come in and eat whatever you want. If whatever you want is not an appropriate meal, you're basically, challenging yourself and kicking yourself in the butt to then circle back and kick yourself in the butt harder and not allow you to recover from challenges to then continue imposing demands like beat yourself up in the morning with a workout, eat whatever you want and be malnourished, and then try to run the rest of your day and be sharp at work and have fun with your kids and do whatever it is that you do in a day. It just makes no sense to cap that to what is very acceptable in society as a whole, to then just have a couple drinks at night before going to bed. Right? It's just like this entire cycle of disaster.
Yeah. I think when I think of it as like our lives are very easy, so it's shifted from like what do I need to live to like what do I need to enjoy myself. And I'm not saying that everyone, their life's so easy, but in general, it's foods, we have a lot of choice. So it's easy to decide whatever you want to eat. And when, with the market and things are what's cheap and, what's easy to get, like good and bad food is, could be the same price. So it's more like what's going to taste the best or what do I want? What can I enjoy?
Yeah. I mean, food's one of those things that, call it one of life's pleasures, call it a vice maybe, but it's easy to have that sort of relationship with food, stray away from what is it supposed to be doing, right? Bring it back to let's set the right intentions. I need X amount of energy to operate. I need these macronutrients. I need these micronutrients. That's first and foremost. If it tastes good, fantastic. If it tastes phenomenal, even better. But if we take the reverse approach to where let me go with the food that tastes the absolute best just to have that experience, and then either hope that I get enough, fueling and nourishment from it, or honestly, a lot of people don't give a shit if that is doing well or not for them. I just eat it because I love the taste. That's where there's a huge disconnect between what it was meant to do, what that dynamic was meant to represent versus where we are today.
Okay, so moving into which we're kind of already blending into it is the performance aspect, which I have three kind of points from this, because when people think performance, they're immediately going to think, training or physical performance. But, we both probably have clients that are, they have jobs where it requires a lot from them, whether that's mental or physical, or, they're a parent, all these things you're performing. Like if you want to be a good parent, you probably need to be fueled well to parent your best. Or if you're a CEO of a company or you work in sales, you need to be sharp. You need to, be there. You need to, you're offering a service to your clients or customers or whoever you're selling to or whatever it is. So there's a physical aspect, a cognition and brain power, and then there's emotional, which food is going to heavily impact all of these. So, people might not really understand how much, you could change your ability to use your brain throughout the day by adjusting food, or how emotional, I want to say emotional, it could be mental health. It could be however, or whatever you're dealing with. It has food has a huge impact on this. Hydration, food. So do you have, like thoughts on that, or clients, like when you're working with somebody that's, a CrossFit athlete versus someone who is just a very busy corporate world person that, you have to adjust food for them or find a specific plan for them to help them in that, facet?
Yeah. I mean, the plans in and by itself, like they look very differently as far as what goes in there. The thought process of laying down is exactly the same, right? Who is this person? Where they're at? What do they need? Like, what is their function? And then go from there, right? If let's let's divide it in two buckets. One that's sports performance and another one that's just life performance, because there's going to be a lot of overlap in there. So in both cases, you need energy. This is essentially what we want: enough energy to do well in your sport, or enough energy to do well in whatever roles you have in life. For the latter, for the life performance, mental acuity and emotional state and energy fluctuations, those are going to be important. As like we don't want slumps throughout the day. And what it all comes down to really is blood sugar management. So we want to keep that steady. We want there to be a steady flow of blood sugar to keep you up and have you feeling good and energized. But we need to be mindful of how much is actually needed for the physical activities that you're doing throughout the day, because it's not going to be a lot. It's going to be less than a lot of people would expect. And if you overdo it, it's going to lead to peaks and valleys that will in turn cause these slumps throughout the day, that will cause fogginess, inability to think clearly, and that classic slump at 3-4 p.m. We're thinking in sports performance, and it's the exact opposite. Like, how do we jack you up enough so that you crush this workout and then you're ready to hit the other one? Because really what happens in the middle doesn't matter. If we're talking about the highest expression of sport, right, is that being the priority, right? So long as you feel ready to go when you need to do your workout, I don't care if you need to take a nap the rest of the day, because the entire intention was to perform that specific demand. Now, we know that's not sustainable over time, and that we need to find a balance, because how long can you hold that pattern for? And that's another conversation. That's why we cycle in and out of several strategies, as in, you mentioned CrossFit. When the Open was 5 weeks long, we're going to implement some things that will have you dragging in between Mondays and Fridays. But man, you're coming out hot on those 2 days, like my coffee example, to where I know that after that, I was worthless. So I better be done with all my programs after that one workout, because I bring a shot after all that coffee and that hard effort. But that's kind of how you design it, and how you play that game. And some aspects, when you prioritize that performance over health per se.
Okay. All right. Well, then that is a perfect segue into your approach with a new client. So I have, where would you want to start, or where would you start with someone they came to you, they want to improve their diet? How would you assess or find a starting point? So like, someone comes to you, hey, let's just call it, I want to, I maybe want to lose some weight, or I want to gain some muscle. It's pretty general. How are you assessing someone's diet? How do you find out where they are or what they're doing, so that you can give maybe an accurate or just some good actionable steps going forward?
Yeah. I'll start a step before that, because I think it's important to kind of understand where I'm coming from with all of it. If you think of it as a pyramid, again, bottom base layer, it's going to be alignment, right? And saying, are we clear on these things? Are we clear that this is important to help you reach your goals? Are we clear on what are contributors towards that, and what things aren't? So establishing all of that. After that, I'm looking, or I think nutrition should be based on caloric intake, second, macronutrients, third, and maybe inside of macronutrients, I want to look at protein intake ahead of the others, and then really everything else. I can, as far as the importance and bang for your buck, everything else goes in that same bucket at the very top of the pyramid. What's everything else? How you're distributing intake and macros throughout the day, meal timing. Are you fasting? Supplements, all the other bullshit, bullshit that people actually want to start implementing before even looking at the things that I mentioned as high priorities. That's basically your least impact items. and they become of lesser impact when the big items are not in check. So yeah, there's that. Now that back to the original question, I'm starting with a new client. The first thing I want to know is what are they currently doing, right? And trying to get a feel for their nutrition IQ. That first happens in conversation, and I ask them, right? Are you following any nutrition plans? Have you ever followed? Like, tell me a little bit about what you eat. And I'm trying to listen to things like a lot of people will say, like, oh, I'm so bad there. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. That's where I struggle, and that's fair. I've had people say, like, I don't know why I'm not improving. Like, I eat real well. I'm like, all right, could you describe what eating real well means? Like, well, I don't eat any meat, any red meat. I eat pastas, and yeah, well, that's not what I'd call eating real well. So just trying to figure out where they're at, because honestly, they just don't know any better, and they're just lacking knowledge and trying to understand nutrition. After that, I always want to press and at least try to get food logs. And people are going to say, well, first of all, they're tedious. It's hard to get them from clients. I know that. Even when you do, for those coaches that may be listening, you say, well, I get bullshit logs anyways. Like, they're just completely off. I know there's meals missing. They're picking the wrong items. That is an assessment in and by itself, right? Because that will then tell me I cannot just tell them these calories and these grams, because they don't even know what they're doing inside MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or whatever it is that they're using. So it's still a useful assessment, but I want to get an idea for that. And also to see what importance they're giving to the foods that they're eating. I want to see the foods that they gravitate towards, because when I actually start giving recommendations, my initial approach is thinking of what is missing. What do we need to add into this? And I try to be at the least invasive as possible. So I don't want to tell you, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat that. I want to say, we need to add these things into what you're doing. I try to be very strategic with that, because a lot of times by adding certain items, you will by default remove others. So if somebody's drinking a lot of juice and soda, and I have them consistently drink a gallon of water every day, I guarantee that if they're drinking a gallon of water, they will drink less juice and soda. You can only drink so much liquid in a day, right? So I can prescribe or give recommendations in a way that will force other actions to kind of go in there and still lead you to where I want to go. And also I want to see the foods that you like, right? I've sent people in the past, I would send people like a really detailed plan. And of course it's going to be biased to the foods that I like. Yeah. Because that's kind of what's top of mind. And I would present that, and they'd say, that's fantastic. I don't like 50% of that shit in there. Like, I don't like this, I don't like that. And like, it's 100% a taste thing, right? Yeah. So I first want to know, what items are you going to enjoy, that you're already eating. And then, as we go through that process and continue to add upgrades and implementations and whatnot, eventually we get to a spot of like, maybe we need to take these things out. Maybe we need to think about, restricting intake over here, or in this particular macro, or as a whole in calories and whatnot. And when we get into a good rhythm there, then, as I mentioned, then I'll start thinking of how can we upgrade this with supplements, this timing issue, good distribution throughout the day, maybe implementing some fasting periods to facilitate digestion and whatnot. So that's pretty much it. Maybe I said it's pretty much it as if it were really simple, but a lot goes into that.
All right. So you're saying you start with alignment, because if you want to move forward and create the plan, there almost has to be an end goal, or there has to be something that they're striving for. Then it was calories. Then it kind of got, just a little bit smaller each time. And like you said, if you told someone to drink, 120 ounces of water a day, it's probably going to replace some stuff. And the approach is kind of similar. You're saying, like, if you focus on the calories, then you focus on the macros, like a lot of the little stuff might start fixing itself, because you're already creating the plan, and it just might they might be making these decisions to make something work, and they just might consciously think, well, this isn't working anymore themselves. So they just might remove it on their own.
Yeah. So set alignment, look at calories, and then I ask myself, do we need more energy, or is there too much energy coming in? And that will kind of give a lot of insight into how we want to approach it. Then we're going to look at those macros, protein being the very first one that I look at, and then trying to balance that out with fats and carbs based on again where the person's at, where they need to be, and then play with all the other details afterwards.
Okay, so does it ever change other than the alignment? Because you're saying you need the alignment no matter what, but past that point, does it ever change for a client? Say they come in and they're like, hey, I have IBS, or I have like a very specific issue they're dealing with. Like I go to the bathroom 4 times a day, or like I break out. Does it change at all? Or is there anything that you're changing when that happens, or something you might look into more?
Yeah, at that point, that comes into play more when I'm in that macro bracket, and maybe even more specifically, how they're getting to those macros. You have a caloric need. We all do. We all have a caloric intake that is maintenance. Anything below that is a deficit. Anything above that is a surplus. We all have that. Unless you've done like a good amount of trial and error, you probably don't know the exact number. But there's good ways in which we estimate it. And by the way, we're always guessing. And anytime I give a nutrition recommendation or I implement one, it's a guess. It's as educated as a guess as possible. But I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that. Let's try that, right? But we're always guessing and estimating. So you need X amount of calories. That's not going to change regardless of IBS or whatever other conditions you have. Yes, those conditions, particularly I'm thinking like more hormonal conditions like thyroid, which is where a lot of people use as, I'll just say excuse, or as the reason why for their shortcomings. So if you have a hypothyroid, you have your body just runs less hot or colder, or you're using up less calories. Hence, that number of caloric intake is down and will be harder to approach via the estimates that we usually use, because we can't account for the degree of hypothyroidism and how that's affecting your caloric needs. But there's always that number of calories, right? Then we go into macros, and when we're talking about something like IBS, that's where it starts to get a little bit trickier, because we need to think about digestive drag. So which macros are a little bit harder to digest that may exacerbate those symptoms. We need to try to figure out if there's any particular one that for some reason irritates it. So like protein is going to be your higher digestive drag macronutrient, but it may be that it's sugar that you just can't tolerate, and it's a big problem. So we kind of need to figure out and see what we have in front of us. But even then, we need to say, we need this macronutrient profile. The person does well with this macronutrient profile so long as certain precise food choices decisions are being made or met. So I can eat 150 grams of protein. It just can't be red meat. And maybe it's an enzyme problem. I just don't do well with red meat, or with chicken, or with fill in the blank. So that's where it starts getting a little bit trickier as far as those conditions are concerned, and where a lot of the small details do have a large impact. I don't know. I don't have a stat to give you, but I can tell you for 80% of people, probably more, alignment, calories, and macros, that will have 98% of the impact in what you're doing.
Okay, so yeah, so like you said, basically, if they 3 people could come in with the exact, let's just say IBS, they have some digestive issue. It could just be 3 completely different issues. So if you're slowly starting to build that base of the pyramid, then you would probably have a better idea, because most people come in, they're like, what is the answer? And you could actually be like a nutrition guru expert, and you might have a few really good ideas that might work, but you really won't know until you like you said, trial and error, and there's going to be a process to figuring it out.
Yeah, and we want to say, like, yeah, they may be completely different things. We have common offenders when it comes to those things. Like, there's things that are like highly inflammatory, and again, you kind of guess to start eliminating those, because we know that a lot of people don't do well with them. Gluten, dairy, caffeine is one, amongst others. So like that would be your go-to to try to figure out. But it very well may be that 3 people come in and you solve a person's issues by eliminating coffee, and the other's issue by eliminating gluten, and the other's issue by eliminating dairy. Like that. Okay. That could be.
All right. So then, broadening back out a little bit more, basic principles. Do you have a few things? And I mean, we probably have some similar stuff just from learning from you, or the education that we both gone through. Mm-hmm. Like, is there a few set things that every single person should be doing, or that you recommend from the start? Hey, these are just non-negotiables, or these things that you should really strive for no matter where you're at.
Yeah, I'll narrow that into nutrition per se. Mm-hmm. I will include hydration in there because it is very important. So let's go with that being number 1. We want people to be drinking 50 to 60% of their body weight in ounces of water per day. If you are very overweight, that will not be doable. And then that also doesn't apply the more overweight you are. So, for somebody who's 380 pounds, maybe 160 is a bit out there. So just throwing that out there. We want to stick to whole foods. That's kind of pretty accepted amongst any diet camp, diet theories, whatever it is. Whole foods are good for you, better than processed foods. We want to, I don't know which one to say first. Let's go with, make sure that you're consuming enough protein. And then my other point is going to be mindful of digestion, because one thing is what you eat, but what really matters is what you can absorb. So we need to be mindful of that. And why I kind of, doubt myself when talking protein and absorption is because I'm about to say starting point for protein, let's have that be 1 gram per pound of body weight. But really, up to how much, I would have anybody and everybody eat as much possible protein as they can digest and absorb. So that actually means 250 grams for some people. That means 130 grams for some people. And I'm thinking men, right? Particularly because 130 grams for women would be like a good amount of protein intake, but maybe a little bit short for an average sized man. But we see bodybuilders crushing 250, 300 grams a day. Works great for them. We see others that, would never leave the bathroom if they try to do 300 grams a day. I know I wouldn't. Yeah.
Okay. So for for the absorption and the digestion, what are ways that someone might see that they're not absorbing well, or like, hey, I do eat 200 grams of protein. Well, maybe what are some signs that I'm not absorbing that well, or, whatever total calories that they're intaking.
Yeah. And for protein per se, in my experience, bloating just is one of the main symptoms. And it's how you feel, it's how you look. Again, with protein in particular, one of 2 things can happen to your poop. Well, or both things can happen to your poop. It can clog you up, or it can really water you down. So hard to say there, but both symptoms could be a sign of excessive protein. Um, it really isn't that hard. You eat a meal. How do you feel after you've ate it? And you don't even need to know and be able to decipher and point out each one of the symptoms. I feel good or I don't. I feel energetic or I feel tired. That is, it is as simple as that. And then after that, when you go to the bathroom, what are you seeing in the toilet? It should be one 18 to 24-inch log, smooth. It should sink right down to the bottom. If you're getting all sorts of gooey, weird color stuff that some of it floats, some of it doesn't, that just isn't normal. It's common, but it isn't. It's not how it's supposed to be looking. So yeah, pay attention to that. And then also, why does it smell like that? Right? Was it the beans? We talked about beans extensively. I think maybe you were trying to hint at that. I do perfectly well with beans.
Yeah.
My kid does too. My wife does not touch the beans. She's prohibited by everybody else in the household to touch the beans. It doesn't mean that beans are the devil, but they don't agree with her. Right? So if you eat a meal and you feel shitty and you can't even decipher what you see in the toilet, that last food, probably you shouldn't be having that. You in particular.
Yeah.
If you feel energetic and light and you had a majestic poop, then repeat.
Perfect. Okay, so you have your own little signals from your body. It's not your Whoop strap or your watch. It's I felt great. I'm not bloated. My bathroom is good. Or it's the opposite. Maybe you feel okay, but then when you go to the bathroom, it was a bomb, and people might just be like, oh, that was weird. Instead, they should be thinking, why did that just happen? Or what did I just eat in the past 8 hours or 24 hours that probably caused that?
Yeah. It's quite simple. And then you can go down all the rabbit holes that you want. We can get stool tests. Maybe not as deep a rabbit hole. Go look at the Bristol stool chart and compare that and grade yourself for every time you go to the bathroom if you want to do that. You can go and do a stool test, check for pathogens. You can check for IBS. You can check for permeability. You can check for food allergies to kind of dig a lot deeper into why that's happening. But if, again, for 80% of people, how do you feel after your meals? And how does that end up looking in the toilet? Is could be as simple as that.
Yeah. Going back to the beans, for me, I used to not do well, but now I've tried introducing different types, different times, different ways to cook them, and they're not bad. I don't really have an issue with it, but I haven't done like a really good extensive test. And where I'm from, I'm in the South, so beans are, I don't want to say they're like heavy in the culture, but a lot of people eat beans often. A lot of people do it differently. The longer they soak, usually in water, if they're soaked, I usually would do a little bit better from what I've tested, but I need to do some more. But yeah, and for me, it could have been just something different. Like I could have been eating something else with it at the time. I could have been, having just a terrible diet, and I just decided one day it was probably the beans, but which a lot of people might, run into as well. They're eating something and they think it might be something else, so I got to do a little more testing to really figure out what works for me on that front, because I like them. They taste great, and they're, I'll go somewhere and they're often in the food. But yeah, okay. So going on to, excuse me, common fad diets. When most people think I need to change a diet, or I need to make a nutritional, change in my life, a lot of people just immediately what diet should I do? Not necessarily thinking what can I change, or how can I, research or whatever I do. So they'll just flock to a diet. And most of them are probably thinking weight loss or muscle gain or whatever it is. But so I have a few fad diets, and that could be okay to start with some people. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's what most people are doing now, good or bad. So we got keto, carnivore, vegetarian, low carb, intermittent fasting, blue zone diet, if it fits your macros, zone diet. There's probably I'm probably missing a ton, but those are pretty common now. When people come to you and they say like, that's what I'm doing, is that like a red flag for you, or are you like, cool, let's just get to, like, I'm just going into my process and we'll work with it? Or do you ever even prescribe that to somebody like, hey, I think you actually might be a really good candidate for this style of diet? Or do you think those are really just, marketing tools and it just happens to work for some people?
I'll start with the last one. I wouldn't say that it just happens to work for some people. Some protocols are easier for certain people to adhere to. So in other words, they're kind of more up their alley,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't like. I forgot how you framed it. They don't just happen to work. They work. If you're trying to lose weight, they work because you were in a caloric deficit. If you're trying to make muscle, they work because you're in a surplus. There's nothing magical in any of them. That is the only reason why they work for either of those purposes. So my framework still holds true in the sense of like, yeah, it's calories. There's nothing wrong with any of those diets when done correctly. Or actually, there are, depending on which one, there are things that I definitely think are lacking. But there is a time and a place for anybody that may be doing that. Maybe it's the exact or the perfect thing, just what you need in a particular point in your life with what you're presenting with. But unfortunately, experience has made me judgmental in the fact that, yeah, that's a red flag for me. Not negative, but it's like, oh, here we go again. Let's dig into this. Like, oh, I'm doing keto. Oh, really? Let me see your ketone levels from the past month. What are you talking about? I haven't done that. Then how do you even know that you're doing keto? It's like, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm just fine. Well, you're not doing keto. You're doing low carb, right? So there's that. When I hear somebody say, oh, no, I'm vegetarian, please explain, because I've seen like actual, like real vegan, high quality food vegetarians. And I've seen, dairy-free cake and pastry vegetarians, completely different. So I immediately, since I'm so keen on alignment being so important, when I hear those things coming in, I immediately think there's going to be misalignment.
Okay. So it doesn't really matter, because if they're working with you, but by the time the changes they make with their alignment, with the calories you're working with them, then with the macros, and then at the very tip, it's likely going to change in a positive way. Or you have some way to educate them, like, hey, if you are doing carnivore, then these are things you need to be focusing on in order to make sure the weight loss and everything is good. But then it's like the blood work and how you feel and your energy. So you could work with it, but you just might be, when you start getting specific, these things got to be checked.
Yeah, because they're going to start affecting biomarkers that I could, what I consider to be biomarkers. Do carnivore for long enough, it's going to impact your digestion. Likely the same for any plant-based approach as well. And again, even if you don't believe me in the alignment piece, the next important piece will be calories. So I don't care whatever fill in the blank diet, you have a set caloric intake. That is maintenance. Below that is a deficit. Above that is a surplus. Like, vegetarian, carnivore, keto doesn't trump that. It doesn't change that, because that's, it's biochemistry. That's how it works. So, regardless of what it is you're eating and what times you're doing it, we need to talk about, or at least look at, intake to be able to come up with a plan to make you lose weight, to hold, or to gain weight. And then after that, you're going to have macronutrient needs, and those need to be met. you need to get in X amount of protein, fats, and carbohydrates. There's going to be an ideal intake of the 3 for each individual, and we're going to be guessing. I cannot tell you what ratio that's going to be for everybody. We're going to be guessing. We're going to try to find it out. But that perfect ratio for you, for you, whomever is listening to me, I'm talking to each one of you individually, not for the entire group. That is there is a number. Mm-hmm. There is a ratio or a range that will work for you better than any other one. We need to try to get as close as possible to that. It doesn't matter what particular foods you're eating. That will not change. So those continue to be the important pieces in there, right? So what goes above that, then it's what I just sort of the everything else piece. So then we can get into well, if you're not eating plants, or what sort of vegetarian, are you a pescatarian? Are you okay with eggs and dairy? But maybe you just don't want to eat the bigger animals. There's all sorts of stuff, and I don't want to just knock on the vegetarians.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, all those things will not trump the science of nutrition. That is still going to be there, and it does have an impact on digestion. Why do what's my big issue with vegetarianism? In order to get enough protein, it's going to be extremely hard to do it with adding other macronutrients into those foods, right? Your plant-based foods that have a lot of protein also still have a lot of carbs. They have a lot of fiber. Makes it even tougher to digest. What's my main issue with carnivore? How are you going to do carnivore and then tell me that you're going to do Fran or do anything competitive with just doing a couple blueberries and a tablespoon of honey?
Yeah, you can eat a whole pineapple before the workout.
Yeah, then I just don't know how that's going to work. Yeah, maybe that's those are topics to dig into and look at individually in a separate time.
Yeah. So you're saying you can't just eat unlimited ribeyes and chicken and fish, and you won't gain weight? I can just eat as much as I want, and I'm gonna keep gaining weight.
Yeah. I mean, you can eat as much as you want, and you're likely gonna gain weight if you're over that caloric set point, whatever that is.
That's what I see in the in the anecdotal evidence and the people commenting and stuff well, you just need to eat more protein. If you can't gain weight if you just eat unlimited ribeyes, you won't. You can't overeat protein. Most people really think that the calories don't matter at that point because you're just eating quality foods.
Yeah. Ironically, I mean, if you were going to choose a macro that would have you eat less, I would say it would be protein. Again, very high digestive drag, high satiety. So it's difficult. It's more difficult to eat more volume of it. Whereas it's way easier to eat a lot of sugar and go past and calories, but it's definitely doable. Definitely.
Okay,
doable.
So supplements. And again, we're just kind of touching here. Do supplements fit into nutrition if someone's working on that, or do they need to just focus on the nutrition first, and then it's the supplements are something almost in their own category?
Yeah, supplements 100% do fit in. Exactly the same approach that I mentioned for everything else. What are we missing? So what nutrients are you not getting from your foods? That's question number one. Number two, can we get those nutrients from food? And it has two or several parts to it. First of all, are you honestly going to eat the foods that have those nutrients? Because I can talk to you about vegetables all day long. If you're gagging while I'm saying broccoli, cauliflower, and spinach, then you're obviously not going to get that. We're going to have to supplement, or likely going to need to supplement. Or if you just can't stand the fact of eating animal meat, which is valid, in the sense whether it be for animal cruelty, religion. If you decide that you're not going to eat animal meat, you need supplements. Period.
Mm-hmm.
To operate. I have not met an intelligent, good or well-designed vegan plan or person that doesn't take supplements. Let's put it that way. So if you're not going to eat the foods that have those nutrients, then it's like that you need to supplement. But then, even then, if you are eating those foods, maybe we need to test you and do like micronutrient testing and see if you're deficient. You may not be eating enough of that nutrient and not be deficient. You may be eating foods that contain that nutrient and still be deficient, whether it be because somehow you use up a lot of it more than normal, or because you're not digesting, absorbing that food as well as you thought, or because maybe that nutrient is not as abundant in that food source as we thought it once was. So there's a lot of reasons. But if you want to do it correctly, try to get all your nutrients in with foods. If not, get tested for micronutrients and then supplement with whatever it is that's missing.
Okay. So if people wanted to, let's just say, they're not ready for a coach, or they don't want to work with the coach yet, or maybe they just need to do a little bit on their own, how would you what would you recommend, or how would you tell someone, hey, if you need to do your own research on food, like, hey, I want to start learning, who should I listen to? How should I start looking it up? Or what are some approaches you would say, hey, go read this, or go look into this?
I don't want to provide a plug for any particular company hinting that they know something, over any other one, because again, the principles of nutrition, the absolute facts are already written. They are there. Mm-hmm. Like we cannot change that. So learn about nutrition. Don't go out learning to try to learn about carnivore diet or vegetarian diet or reading the China study or any of those things from the get-go, because it's going to be a very, very highly biased approach and manipulation of the facts. If you truly want to learn, look up a nutrition coach education program and go there, because they're going to give you the facts, and then take those principles and study carnivore, keto, vegetarian under that light. And you can then see, what things make sense, why it is that this can be effective for some people at certain points, when it may not be ideal, when it may be a terrible idea, so forth and so on.
Okay, so focus on nutritional science, figure out what's real so that you can start applying it past that point.
Yes. If you truly want to learn and go into the weeds with it. Another option you have is to hire a coach who has that approach and whom you trust knows that nutritional science, has that information, and will, apply it under that light with what's actually relevant to you as an individual and what you're going to do. Because a lot of things that you're going to learn in a nutrition coach program, they don't apply at all to you. So It may be overkill, but.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Once you have the science, once you really understand it, then it might be a good point to why is carnivore? Why do people flock to that? Then you might be able to go in and see what people could be benefiting from. And you might be able to take a piece from that. And then same with someone who's very pro vegetable, plant-based, or someone who's, high fat or high protein. Then you could probably start making those decisions for yourself and deciding what is good and what kind of benefit are these people providing.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, everybody. I think that's a good stopping point. I think next we're going to get a little more into supplements. So if you have any supplemental questions, please drop them below or send us a message. But we can get a little more into those. Maybe we'll hit some of the top supplements people should be taking, or maybe just what people think they should be taking and how they could fit into your diet to supplement your diet. So I hope everyone, got a little bit out of this. We had only a few talking points, but we got a lot of information on it. Any closing thoughts for anybody out there?
And again, intentions are everything. So have alignment first and foremost. And usually when you approach nutrition from that point, it will start making sense how everything else fits in.
Okay. So intention, alignment, chew your food. And then follow Henry on Instagram because he does a lot of good nutrition reels and content that's it's digestible content, pun intended. So yeah, we appreciate everyone listening in. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to hit us up, and we really appreciate you guys following along with us. Have a great day.
See ya.